remember that, but we just got to the content, so perfect timing anyways.
I can jump in, kind of just because I'm eager to talk about this. The last 2 days, this was great, gratuitous timing, because Monday and Tuesday of this week, I hosted a couple of info sessions with our current volunteer base because we're specifically really full gear now with reinstating our volunteer council. It was something that we did a really good job at pre-COVID before I was with the organization. But obviously, the pandemic just put an end to a lot of things, and we're still in the process of bringing them all back to where we used to be. So we were able to meet with over a dozen of our volunteers that are interested in sort of supporting us in this elevated goal, rather than just coming into the house for a couple of hours and not thinking about Ronald McDonald House again until their next shift in 2 weeks. We know that some of our volunteers not only are donors, but really just want to know more of the context of what's going on in the organization behind the scenes. So, what our volunteer council meetings look like in the past were a monthly, sort of informal meeting where a group of about a dozen of our volunteers that are assigned to the council will meet at one of our houses. We'll have staff from across the organization there, and it'll look a little different for each meeting, but depending on what's most pressing for the houses. So, like during the summer, our houses get really busy as far as just families in and out. So, we were going to bring a member of our family services team in to talk to the volunteers about sort of the intricacies of the admission process for families. When we have like our special events and fundraisers coming up, I want to bring in some of our development team and our events manager to talk through those pieces. And then the other side of it is not just us sharing information with the volunteers, but really allowing them to have a platform to give feedback to us. So I was just talking with the rest of my team, but it was kind of funny that these last two meetings were just supposed to be info sessions, but they kind of turned into little volunteer council meetings because I was talking about how the goal is to get feedback on the program and everything. And the last 30 minutes, we kind of just jumped into doing that. And I was really happy that people were eager with ideas already on ways that we can update our onboarding processes and different activities that we can do to engage like corporate and school groups when they're on site. So we're still kind of in the infancy stage of reviving our volunteer council. So I'm excited to hear other ideas of what you guys have seen that succeeds and don't succeeds. But I'm really excited with where things are going. We have a good base of people that are really eager to help out.
Hey, I had a question on that. So with that council and kind of putting it together with some of those volunteers, how did you go about kind of like choosing what volunteers and asking them? Because that's something that I think we don't do and could be something super beneficial. And we have a lot of volunteers who have been here for a long time who I think have a lot of great ideas. And it kind of only gets to myself or our other house operations. But I think that could be something super beneficial for our house to do.
Yeah, great question. We at the end of the year, we always do a volunteer survey that goes out to all the volunteers across our four houses. So I added a question at the end of our survey this year asking if people were gonna have any interest in the volunteer council. So that was a good kind of temperature check to see how many people had interest when I kind of explained it briefly. And then about a week or two after that is when I sent a message out to all of our volunteers, a longer email, kind of explaining a little bit of what the council is going to be and just sending them the dates and times for these info sessions that I had. And then the last two nights were more so actually explaining in depth what the program is going to look like, getting ideas from people as far as like scheduling the meetings and all that stuff. So as far as who is actually going to be in the council, that's a piece that I'm still working on because we had so many people interested that I'm going to have to make some decisions on who's going to be in it and who's not. But hey, that's a good problem to have, right? So this was more just info sessions, but I sent it out to all of our volunteers and just kind of let people come if they were interested and see where it goes from there.
That's an awesome idea. Thank you for sharing that, Dylan. You may have said this. Is it, I know you all have four houses. Is it across all of your houses that you're going to do like one council for the whole organization?
Yeah, that's kind of the interesting part is that we're based in Tampa and St. Petersburg, which is like 30 minutes away and across a really scary bridge across the bay. So that's a little bit of one of the challenges we're seeing is we want to activate both sides of the bridge because it's pretty much a 50-50 split as far as where our volunteers are. So my plan was, since we're having monthly meetings, to just switch the location every month between Tampa and St. Pete and then have a virtual option like over Zoom for the other people that don't want to make the drive late at night. Um, so yeah, that's sort of the plan right now. Get everyone from all of our houses involved.
I did also see that Kyle joined us. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello.
We are just discussing what our organizations already do well in terms of recruiting volunteers, any cool specialized programs that you have. I know someone asked about teens earlier, and so I'll share. We don't have like an official teen board like some organizations have, but the last few years we've participated. Our city has a summer youth job training program, and we have used that as our opportunity to have a small handful of teen volunteers in the summer. So our city actually pays them to volunteer with us, which is really cool. And so it's been a really neat opportunity for us to recruit them. And one of the things that I learned was between the first year and the second year that we participated is I really kind of honed in and gave them specific, like, here's how you're going to learn about the hospital programs. You're going to pack these lunches with love. You're going to do this. I'm going to take you on a tour of the hospital. Like, I kind of made specific bullet points for them to experience. So it wasn't just you're volunteering like any normal volunteer. You're learning specific things because that's what they were hoping to get out of it. So I was trying to increase that. So that was a fun way to work with teenagers. But for us right now, it's just a small handful through this program. We haven't done a wider teen board. Does anyone else have examples they want to share? And then the next question will be, what volunteer populations or subsets are missing in your organization or aren't being well utilized yet? So we can talk about both.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and expand on what was it Dylan? I can't remember, or was it Kyle? No, it wasn't Kyle. Dylan.
It was Dylan.
I would want to move to something like that. We did start off with a small council of volunteers, and we kind of formalized it. One of our now board members previously, he was doing a fellowship, and I can't remember the name of the institute, but one of his projects was specifically looking at our volunteers, their demographics, their background, their age group, and kind of regionally look at who volunteers here um, at RMHC and what are their goals, what are their ambitions, are these working professionals, are these retirees, are these teens. So after looking at that for about a year, we kind of reformatted our Registry Society. So instead of being an official young professionals group, as labeled as a Registry Society, we've kind of rebranded it as our brand ambassadors. So these are people from all ages and ranges and different backgrounds. And similar to how we kind of all have talked about onboarding our individual volunteers, kind of individually onboarded them into this specific group. And together we've gotten to a point where we create an event calendar with them. So they put together all the events for our families throughout the year. They fundraise on their own through either their community, through their community or through their work, or do some sort of match giving. And now we're at a point where we would like to expand that program into our other houses in our chapter.
That's an awesome idea. I love that. I like that switch from young professional to brand ambassador, so it can be including anyone. That's lovely.
Yeah, Manny, I'm curious for that group, are those individuals who are coming regularly to the house and then you kind of expanded their role to include this, or is this just a separate role altogether that folks can be brand ambassadors without having some other ongoing position or commitment to the house?
Yes, of course, great question. They originally started with our core house volunteers, and then from there we expanded it. Our core volunteers pre-COVID, we didn't have that many. We're not a very big house. Um, we only serve roughly 30 people, which is uh, 10 families at most. So we only had a group of 7, and out of those 7, we kind of wanted more feedback from them out of their volunteer experience. So they said they wanted to do other things besides just the generic GSA work, organizing, beautification, cleanup, normal stuff that we would have our GSAs normally do. They wanted to expand outside of that. So that's where the idea came from, and it came out of our core volunteer group. Does that answer your question, or?
Yes, yeah, thanks.
I was going to share just a couple of things that we do that aren't as formalized as what you guys have talked about so far, but we utilize, a lot of you have heard me talk about how much I love having some core volunteers who have repeating shifts. And one key role that we have is what we call core help around the house. Those folks are people who come in and they have devoted tasks that are theirs or an area that is theirs to manage. And when they first come on, then we talk about expectations. We decide which area or areas they want to be in charge of. And then, maybe a couple of weeks I need to check in with them. But after they're comfortable, really, they come in, they do their thing, they take how long it's going to take, and then they head out. And it's wonderful. We have people doing grocery shopping, restocking our laundry areas with products, taking care of our kitchen reset, so things get redistributed across our 4 different kitchen spaces, things like that, where they have great ownership, and I love that. So that's one specialized role. Another is that I have, and this is a huge luxury, you guys, and I can't even believe it still, it's been almost a year, but I have a very part-time assistant who is volunteer, and he works with me 2 days a week, and he takes care of volunteer application processing and responses to other volunteers who are interested, and he can orient any new volunteers, things like that. Like basically he can do almost anything that I do, with the main exception of group scheduling is the main thing that I have primary ownership of that he doesn't really touch at all. And then the third thing is we actually call it ambassador, but it looks a little bit different for us. Our ambassadors can go to offsite events and be representatives, which there's some overlap there, but we also utilize them here in the house, where they do informational sessions for people who are potential volunteers, but who have questions and don't really want to jump into service, which is honestly a very small pool. We don't need them very often for that. But also they kind of bridge the gap between volunteerism and what it looks like to be a donor, just answering basic questions for people who think we're a restaurant but want to believe that we might be more. And so I just really love that we have that other capacity. So those are our 3 kind of specialized roles at this time.
Yeah, I've always loved hearing about your core volunteer program. I think that is a really great way to acknowledge that some people do want that ownership over something. So we're a pretty small house. We're 21 rooms. And we actually just this week started a linen exchange service for our long-term guests, where we will take their dirty towels and sheets and remake their beds. And I had put out a little thing in our last volunteer newsletter, like, hey, if any volunteers, like if this sounds like your jam and you want to help with this, like let me know. And I had a volunteer who was ecstatic. She changed her schedule. She used to do this at RMHC Cincinnati, which is a huge house. And she was like, I would love to be in charge of laundry. And I wasn't necessarily recruiting someone to be in charge of laundry. I was just recruiting someone to help us on Laundry Tuesdays. But I was like, I see your passion for this. So she's now our laundry assistant, and she's very excited. And I mean, literally, we've done it 1 week, and she talked to me for 20 minutes about how we could do it better. And I was like, we absolutely could. Thank you. I'm learning so much from you about this laundry process that I did not think about. So I'm excited to maybe incorporate more pieces like that. And that kind of made me think of your core program, Stephanie.
Yeah, Jillian, after your volunteer gets established, I want to pick her brain because we just put together a folding tutorial for our people who are just new to us and want to help with laundry folding. So I want to pick her brain a little bit on that when she's settled.
Yeah, I will. She would probably love to talk to you about it.
Can I be taught some laundry folding? My wife would love that if I was better at it.
Noted. I will try and look at a good calendar time for me. And anybody wants to talk laundry, I am all in. So
I probably need to take the laundry folding tutorial, because I'm like, how do we do this? How do you fold a fitted sheet? I don't know. I know there's ways, but I don't know how they are. So nobody likes it when I'm in the laundry.
I second the fitted sheet thing.
yeah, if anybody wants it, we've created, my roommate and I, great tutorials. I feel proud of them actually. So I'm happy to share.
I love that. Are there any volunteer populations or subsets that you feel like are missing in your organization or underutilized? So this could be demographics or a trait about the volunteer, like they only want to come one time, or their availability, different things like that, that you feel like you're like, I think there's a place for them. I just don't know where it is yet.
We definitely, sorry, bad time. You're fine. You're fine. We definitely underutilize males. No offense to all the males on the group. And we don't have a great team program. So like, we don't have a lot of teams in our house. Like, if you look at our volunteers, it's definitely like middle-aged, older, retired women. Unfortunately, it looks really bad. And I would love to figure out how to, how to fix that. But a lot of our I am talking. A lot of our volunteer needs are sitting at the front desk. So you're answering phones and, things that, again, no offense to the men on the group, like the guys don't want to sit there and they don't want to do that. And the teenagers can't do that. And so it just makes it a little difficult to expand the demographics and age range of the volunteers in our programs.
That reminds me, Erica, so another of our specialized roles is recycling. So because we do the pop tabs, so we have one of our guys who doesn't really want to do sit down tasks. He's my recycling volunteer. So every week he picks up our pop tabs, any other random recycling things, and takes them to our recycling center. But he's also then my on-call person if something breaks and it doesn't need a licensed fixer.
Right.
And that's, that only takes care of one, but
I had one of those and he was really great for a couple months. And then about Thanksgiving time, my house manager was like, Barry's dead to me. Don't ever bring him back. And I still have no idea what happened, but Barry can't come back. And so we're kind of like, but he was my lone male for a while. And like I said, he would like that, Stephanie, he would do all prop tab runs and like, oh, this cabinet needs to be fixed. This light needs to be done. This toilet's plugged, like whatever. Barry did all of that. And I just haven't replaced him yet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bummer. I was going to add to the list for us, Spanish speaking volunteers is a thing that I really need to be working on this calendar year. It's on my goals to do because we don't have enough Spanish speaking paid staff members. And I would love to have more, but I also want to utilize them in a way that's purposeful and not just feels like they're just called in for last minute translation or something like that, right? They deserve to have their own scheduling too. So trying to figure out what that looks like for our chapter.
Similarly, we have on our list of first maybe we want to do an audit of our materials that we think need to be translated, and then from there recruit volunteers who would be willing to do that, because I've had a few reach out to me and I'm like, yes, I know we need you, but I don't know what yet, and so it's like, okay, let me figure out what the ask is before I make the ask, so that I, like you said, it can be thoughtful and not just like come in right now, but more intentional, but that it's a skill set they want to use, and so I want to honor that for them. That's great. And that kind of leads into are there unmet needs in your organization that you feel like staff time could maybe be better utilized if you had a volunteer to do that? Like Stephanie, you blew my mind when you were just saying that you have a volunteer who helps you with volunteer management. I was like, that actually makes so much sense.
I have that underlined and circled on my pen as well.
I will say to that, I have a volunteer that helps manage all of our meal groups for me. So like I kind of oversee her, but anybody who does that meal group, you know, it's a ton of work. And so Sue comes in. I mean, that's literally all she does. Like she comes in once a week for like 3 or 4 hours and does nothing but confirm the groups and book new groups and send out surveys and communicate. I mean, it's amazing because it saves me so much time with not having to mess with that. I'm sorry, my 3-year-old wants to say hi.
Hi. Also, Erica, I'm putting in the notebook about that. I'm just going to put a line item because you didn't put in details. But if you'll head to the Think Tank notebook, plug for that if you're new to us, and put more detail about that because that's a specialized role in my opinion that a lot of us would like to know more about.
Right. So, okay, I will caveat with that. We are a week away from our biggest event of the year. So after like this phone call, I am like head down doing nothing but like our gala stuff for the next like week and a half. So if I forget, Stephanie, will you just send me an email like after the 18th and remind me to go do that? Because I might forget in the chaos.
Erica, if I can ask too, that's actually a position that we're looking to fill for one of our houses right now. And we've interviewed 2 different new volunteers and walked them through the whole process of going through the meal program. And it kind of hasn't worked out with either of them. They just lost interest or weren't really who we were looking for. So just kind of wanted to ask how this volunteer fell into your guys' lap or if it was something that she was sort of interested in taking on the
No,
admin meals.
I bombarded her with it. It was something that our full-time front desk person used to do as part of her job. And then Theo, be quiet. And then we ended up having to fire that employee back in early 2020. Ooh, no, it was middle of 2020. It was the middle of COVID. And at the time I knew I could not do it justice like it needed to be done. And so this volunteer had already been in place, helping at the front desk once a week. And so she was one of those, like, she wants to be helpful and she just needs a project and she's happy. And so I called Sue and I bombarded her with, hey, we fired XYZ and I need you to do this. And she told me yes, thankfully. She's wonderful in a million different ways. She does need a lot of hand holding. And because she is a volunteer, she won't hand out her cell phone number, which I understand and I respect. When she's not at the office every day, sometimes groups are like, wait, I talked to Sue and Sue's not here. And so sometimes things, I mean, obviously come back to me as it should. But really, Dylan, I bombarded her. I put her on the spot. It was COVID. She needed a project. We needed help. And so she did it.
Cool. Thank you.
So we all just need to find ourselves a Sue.
Everybody needs a Sue. Yes. Yes.
I have like another example of a specialized volunteer that, again, I didn't intend to have, but I have a family room volunteer who's been with the program a long time, predates me, and she's always just been a little, like, she always struck me as disgruntled. She never gave me feedback, but she just always felt disgruntled. And recently, we have started asking her, she expressed interest in crafting. And so she now is in charge of crafting decorations for the seasons and holidays in our family room. And she decorates the family room when she's in there. And I have never seen her smile so much as now that she does the crafting for she still does for other, like, she staffs the family room as a volunteer, but part of it, she specializes in making crafts and decorating the family room, which I wouldn't have identified as a need, but it is lovely. Everyone loves the decorations, and it has changed her demeanor completely. And so I was like, okay, this is for me a great example of, like, sometimes people just need the right motivation, the right project. That's what made me think of it, as Erica was like, she just needed a project. And I'm like, for some reason, that project has just changed her whole experience of volunteering, and she seems so much happier with it, and it makes me so much happier.
I'm so glad you said that, Jillian, because and Erica just stepped away, but something that we have that utilizes teens and their moms. We have National Charity League. I don't know how many of you have a chapter in your area, but it's moms and daughters who volunteer together, and they do our door decor that they swap out monthly. So they do it at home and then bring it to us. So it's something they can do off-site, doesn't take up additional space for us, and then just as cheery. And it's so easy. So they get to pick the decor as long as it's family friendly, where we don't have parameters, and it just has to be light enough to hang on a little command strip hook. So that's something that we do for teens. But in terms of unmet needs, actually back on topic, sorry about that. I feel like I misdirected us. My apologies. For us, we are looking actively for someone who can take a bigger role in our pantry management. We label everything, file things in order of expiration, but I am looking for someone who can pull things when they're close to expiration so that we can get them to our partners who will use it, even if it is close to expiration or in the Best Buy range, but past the date on the can, or someone who can do quarterly inventory for us so that we can get a better feel. Our ultimate goal is that we know what do we use when, so that we can put something on our wish list in advance. If we know we always use a lot of this, mac and cheese in June, then we want to put it on our wish list sooner than June. So that's one of the things that I'm actively looking for. I also would love to have a volunteer who can take on our welcome bags. I'm assuming you guys probably have something similar where you put items in the room for the family, toiletry items or pillowcases and blankets for us, stuffed animals. But I think that's something a volunteer could really do, or at least do some prep work on that. And then another thing that is actually on my radar and doesn't have perfect overlap with what Erica was just describing, but I think I can learn from is someone who can do some food planning for the rare group that I say yes to, where we say yes that we will have something ready for them. I try not to do that because we as a staff don't have the bandwidth, but if I had a volunteer who I could call them and say, hey, this week I need you to plan 4 meals for groups who are coming in, or this week I just don't need any, right? But just something where I could have some support there. So those are some of my unmet needs.
Okay, I missed the first part of that, Stephanie, and I apologize. Background for all of you, I work from home with my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old. So you're gonna see them a lot. And it's finally like, I work for Arkansas. I live in Iowa. It's like crazy nice for February, like 60 degrees. And so I had to go boot the children outside. So I missed the first part of what Stephanie was saying. So if this is overlap, just Jillian, tell me to be quiet. We do have specialized volunteers that do nothing but keep our storage room clean. Like she stocks all of our shelves, she dates everything, she keeps track on when it needs to be expired, when it needs to be moved out, when it needs to be used by, like rotates it. Donations come in, it doesn't go on the shelf till Mary Lou touches it. And she also makes our welcome bags because she knows what's in there. And she knows, hey, we're running short on shampoo. That needs to be a wish list Wednesday. We're running short on razors. Make that a wish list Wednesday. And it has been fantastic because staff doesn't have to worry about it. Like the house manager doesn't have to think about it. The program managers don't have to think about it. Like Mary Lou has it under control. My caveat to that again is if you're ever gonna like relinquish control to a volunteer, make sure you have 2 or 3 people that are in there, because we're getting to the point where, again, Lord love Mary Lou, but she is so particular about how it needs to be done. I have to be very careful about who I put in there with her to help her do it. And she's had some health problems last year. And so she hasn't been coming in as often. And so, but of course, you still are getting those donations. It still has to be dealt with. So to find her the right volunteer that can handle the particular way that she wants it done has been a challenge. So once, Stephanie, you do get to that point, just make sure you make it more of a team versus a one-man show.
Definitely very sage advice for any time you're putting a volunteer in a specialized role. It takes all different personalities to make a volunteer program run for sure. These have been some really good ideas, and don't want to cut anyone off if anyone has other unmet needs or ideas. But where I tried to kind of connect them is to start thinking about, so these unmet needs or these roles that we're talking about, what are unique about the roles that would allow you to appeal to a new or different audience? So some of them are pretty obvious, like if we're talking about a teen program, obviously those are teens that we're going to be targeting. But when you're thinking about your pantry or your laundry or your brand ambassadors, like what are the things about that are unique or different that you could capitalize on and leverage to market to new volunteers or to your current volunteers to give them a new experience? And for me, that's kind of where you can start branching out. So this may not be something everyone has ideas immediately for, but I think that's where we can start making that connection to build your plan for the future. So my example would be, one way to take this, we were talking about teens earlier, and I talked about this program that I have with the city. And one of the things that I learned from the first year to the second year was, while I want them to volunteer and do good work for us, it was also very important to think about what are they getting out of the experience. And while I think about that for all of my volunteers, usually it's like they feel good because they're volunteering. But for teens, it was like they want an experience that will help them get a job in the future, or that relates to something they're interested in. Like they're looking for more tangible skills, like teaching them how to use a copier. Minds were blown. Those kinds of things. So for the teens, I was like, okay, I have to rethink. Like, I don't necessarily need someone to make a bunch of copies, but if I can work that in for them, they can learn how to do double-sided copies on the copy machine and have that as a professional skill set. So like those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about that you could leverage to help find new volunteers. Any thoughts from you all?
I was just gonna kind of piggyback off of that, Jillian, say, yeah, it should be mutually beneficial for the volunteer and for the organization. And certainly for teens, they're gaining a lot of skill, but even for anyone at any age or any point in their life, that maybe it'll help fulfill time for them where they're trying to gain a new skill or just have experience to reference, or a person for a recommendation, for any of those types of things. So anything that kind of, especially if it's a project, if they're managing something like a pantry and they come up with an inventory list, it could kind of go as far as they want to take it, to really gain some skill for them and some satisfaction.
Absolutely. I think that could apply to almost every volunteer population. Agreed. And for some of them, it might be, as opposed to like learning a skill, it might be just the socialization fact if they don't have a lot of opportunities to socialize. I know that's a lot of our volunteers are there to help us, but also, I can't stick them in the laundry room by themselves. That is not what they are trying to get out of the experience. So, building that in too.
If I can piggyback off that real quick, Jillian, that's something we really identified too, is that we have this base of like 100 active volunteers that love the organization, love spending time in the house, but they don't always really get the chance to meet one another. Most of our volunteers come for their 3 or 4 hour shift. They're on site and they're usually the only volunteer on site. So they're just interacting with staff that are here. And then they see the person that's coming to relieve them as they're walking out the door, and that might be the only interaction that our volunteers get with one another. So every April, which is Volunteer Appreciation Month, of course, we host a big volunteer event that's more of just a social for people to get to know each other. But especially one of my goals with this new volunteer council that we're restarting is just to give our volunteers a platform to get to know each other and kind of socialize. I want one of their goals to be kind of administrating and putting together their own social events for the rest of the volunteer base, because we're all one happy family, but we're a little separated right now. So I think getting our volunteers to actually know the other volunteers that are doing the same things in the houses will go a long way with kind of getting more buy-in from people.
I love that. Great idea. In a similar vein, one of my professional goals this year, we also do an April event that's kind of larger scale. And I did this a little bit last year, but I'm trying to be more intentional about it this year, is about every other month hosting a smaller volunteer appreciation event, fun thing that some volunteers can come do together for that exact reason. Because you know, a bigger dinner isn't appealing to everyone, or like if you're busy that night, then you've missed the one thing this year. So trying to offer some different things. Like this month we're gonna do, it's called Main Event, like bowling arcade dinner place. So you know, it'll be limited number of folks who can come, but it's just a fun opportunity to come hang out with your fellow volunteers. Yeah, it's a great piece of it. Any other things about some of these roles that you feel like could be unique that could help you draw in more people or different people?
I will mention, because this is something that like was an opportunity that dropped into my lap, felt like a pretty amazing gift. We have a local university, Boise State University, Blue Turf. And we have a young lady who was a volunteer with as part of her internship, making breakfast, one of our normal roles, and she was graduated. She was a data analytics major. And she enjoyed her experience in the house. And then about a month later, she was like, you know, for classes, sometimes we're asked to partner with nonprofits. Would you guys be interested for me to like keep you on my list if there's something that I think could be a good fit? And I was like, absolutely. And then about 3 weeks later, she was like, actually, I decided to start a club for other data analytics people. And we want to use our skill set for nonprofits. Would you guys like to be a partner to that? And I'm like, definitely. So we've had them work on 5 different projects for us that have helped us either gain better understanding of our data, or actually our pantry inventory process that I want someone to have ownership of. They have developed that process for us. They have been working on a volunteer survey and a guest survey for us. So all kinds of things that either they're fine tuning for us or they're creating new for us. And not all of you will have that particular thing, but I'm sure if you're in a college town, there might be some clubs that would be interested in using their skills and learning, because really their goal is, we want to be these great working professionals, have a skill set that we can utilize, but they don't know what it's like to work with clients as their students. And so we're giving them some experience and we're gaining some free benefit for us. So I just wanted to plug that as something for your team maybe to brainstorm, or if your development team wants to be thinking about that too, that I think fits in this category.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece, and definitely as a former higher education professional, we'll definitely say service learning classes, specialized clubs, great source of specialized volunteers who, yeah, are trying to build a skill themselves, but also have a lot to offer. If you're near university or a community college, any school would be helpful. Even some high schools now are doing more of those kinds of things. It's, you know, probably not as refined of a skill set yet, but they're getting there. That's awesome. The later half of the topic was talking about volunteer committees. And again, I wasn't really sure when we say those words, what direction other people's brains move in, because we all have different functioning brains. But where I was thinking was just like we have our board, of course, but we have a programs committee, we have a facilities committee, a finance committee, a special events committee. That's where my mind went. But as Dylan was talking, I was like, oh, that's also like a committee of volunteers. So really both are applicable here. But I know some houses rely heavily on their committees, some maybe not so much. So I was wondering if anyone wanted to share what committees are truly working well at your organization and serving a great purpose and fulfilling a need for your organization.
I think our probably biggest standout committee is our marketing committee. I know that they do a lot outside of their meetings, but they are always And I'm assuming if you guys have a similar thing, they're always looking at our brand, right? And trying to understand, do people know what we really do? What are the inroads we have? One of our marketing committee members is in the middle of putting together as a pet project, a highlight of who our volunteers are and what they do for us, kind of like capturing the heart of that, not just the statistics, which is what we highlight in our impact report, obviously, but I love that they really are often thinking about that. How do we connect the mission to people's hearts in our community, new ways, or again, getting it out there. And I feel like they are, if I look down the list of what our different committees are, they're the ones that I feel like I can brag about each one of them for their great work and their great knowledge.
I'm gonna go down a little small side road here. Do you guys have a lot of interaction with the different committees? I'm thinking obviously board, finance, we have an exec committee. We have our development director has a development committee. My COO has a Caramobile committee for the Caramobile. She's got a facilities committee. We've got committees for each of our events, our big black tie gala, our golf tournament, our casino night, our Blue Jeans Bubble. So there's a lot of committees. They're obviously volunteers. They're obviously valued. They spend a lot of time planning these events, sitting on these boards. Outside of that, their their interactions with the house and with our families is very, very low. And their interactions with me is very, very low. Part of that is because I'm not on site. But part of that, even when I was on site, I had very little interaction with these committees. But then they were like, well, don't you know who these people are? Don't you know who this person is? And I'm still responsible for keeping track of their hours and things like that. So I guess the question is, as volunteer managers, do you have interactions with these committees? Do you sit on these committees? Do you know these people? And do they have engagement within the house with your families and doing events for the families that are there?
Well, it is exactly on topic, Erica. So excellent question. The way I phrased it was, what role do you have in managing the volunteers on these committees? But basically the exact same thing. I will say for my house, no, I don't really have much involvement with them, although we do make a concentrated effort, particularly in the summer, to invite and request volunteer or committee volunteers to participate as a board or as a dinner group for us, because that's when our dinner group recruitment is the lowest, because we rely heavily on students. And so we ask them, whether it's as a committee coming to serve a dinner, or hey, do you want to bring your church or your family to do this? So that's one way we try to get them involved in the actual house and have that experience with our families. But it's not required. It's just an ask I make every summer. So everyone else, how are you engaged in managing those volunteers, if at all?
I'm also here at Denver not involved with those committees at all, really at all. Our board they'll cook at the house twice a year, and that's led by our CEO, and then I help with the scheduling, and any planning leading up to it. But otherwise, very limited interaction, and I do invite them to our annual volunteer event, or I did this past year, so that them and their families are welcome to join in that sense, but otherwise a very limited while I'm at the house.
Yeah, I just have to second Vanessa. I don't have a lot of connection with the different committees yet. I think I'm getting more connected as time goes on. I know I've only been here for 4 months, but and we don't really see a lot of our committee members being involved in the house. And we really value their, opinions and thoughts and things they bring to the table, but we don't often kind of have them more hands-on at all. And I'm very much more, I run all the hands-on at the house and hospital room and a lot of those things. So I don't have as much involvement yet, but hopefully, I can be taking notes and engaging them a little bit more and seeing if we can get them involved.
Yeah, to go off everyone's sentiment real quick. Yes, we are at a position now where we are engaging with our board members and all our subcommittees. However, that's just like everyone, that's never been the case. It's been a very slow transition. And I think just because that's been with the rotation of new younger board members getting involved. Traditionally, our past board members were not as committed voluntarily, more monetary in status with the organization. So getting new, younger, fresher board members really opened the conversation to getting them to put on events for our families, whether it's just the Meals of Love or coming out to do a barbecue with their company. So we have had a couple of our board members in the last 3 years at least come, whether they're Bank of America, our electric company out here, Edison, and or their local company, bring out a couple people and do some sort of event with our families. But it has been a slow transition, and this is really connecting the pieces with development and volunteerism together, and just finding where everyone connects differently. So if you have, your development committee on your board, what are the things they're looking at? What are the pinpoints where us as volunteer managers or coordinators can come in and advocate for our piece for their groups to come in? That's where we've really seen at least a little headway, but it's still an ongoing battle, if you want to call it. And that includes we have a walk committee out here specifically that fundraises for our walk event that we host once a year. And then we have our gala committee that goes and not only finds sponsorships, but solicits for our auction items.
And Megan added similar in chat that at her chapter, they don't keep track of hours for the committees and have very little interaction, that the board hosts a meal once a year, and that they invite the committee members to volunteer appreciation events and send them, volunteer wide emails and as well as birthday cards, which is a nice touch. So yeah, and I think that's pretty common. And I don't necessarily know that there's something wrong with that. Like, we are at they are volunteering in a very specific way. That is a specialized volunteer role. And I know, like, I myself just rolled off of a board for another organization. And I'm very passionate about that organization. But I only have so many hours in the day. So I was not as active of a on the ground volunteer as I would have liked to have been, but I was in a lot of meetings and doing fundraising and doing other things for the organization. And, I wasn't always able to do all the things I wanted to do. So I always try and keep that in mind because I don't necessarily think it's bad that they're not involved in more ways. But sometimes it is a challenge if you're trying to help them get more connected to the families or have those experiences or kind of understand what's going on. I am curious, Megan, you mentioned this in yours, that you don't track hours for them, and we don't either. And that I feel like is lacking on our end. Like, I think we could have their hours represented at least somewhat in our hours tracking. So I'm curious at how other people approach that.
I can just say, Jillian, so the reason we don't track hours for them, so we use Better Impact as our hours tracking system, and then we use Razor's Edge additionally, so we can keep track of everybody in Razor's Edge. But Better Impact, they charge us per active volunteer, so we don't have the board members and committee members in there. So we only use our super active housewarmers that we're seeing on a weekly or bi-weekly or a couple times a month basis, just to save money on that front.
I literally have a giant spreadsheet where I track all the hours for all of the committees and all of our board. Beginning of the month, I actually just sent it out yesterday. We'll send an email to all the staff and be like, okay, I need names, committee, of the committee members that met this month, how many hours that they get. And I just have a giant spreadsheet, and there's there's probably, I don't think I have it open. Do I have it open anymore? No, I don't. I mean, there's probably 200 names just on that, like, tab, like on that spreadsheet. And I just have a column for what committee or board they're on, because there is some crossover. I have one board member that she's a board member, and then she sits on 4 different subcommittees. And so I have like I said, a column where I can keep track of who's in what committee. And there's a column for each month, and I just go through and they send it to me and I add it in there. And it's probably not the best way to do it, but we don't, Jillian and I have talked about this numerous times. I don't currently have a database for my volunteers. So all their hour tracking, all their communication, like everything is on spreadsheets. And so it's just kind of been the best way to do it. We didn't used to do it. And then probably back in, I would say 2019, my executive director was filling out the radar report, and she was like, it dawned on her that we didn't have board hours and committee hours in there. And so it's been a thing ever since like 2019, because I got in trouble for it. So spreadsheets are my friend.
And I agree with Eric on that. Spreadsheets are your friend, and it is a requirement. Global requires you to report board member hours. Maybe us, as not volunteer oriented, don't deal with it. Maybe our development side of the house deals with it, but we are supposed to count those hours in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in. Those of you who've been to more than one meeting, or maybe only one meeting besides today, already know how strongly I feel about databases and reporting things and recording things. I will put in a plug if you don't already have something, or if you're like, what we've looked at is too expensive. I love Volunteer Local. I will be so happy to schedule individual time with any of you who want to talk about it, because it's my favorite thing. It's amazing. No database is ever going to be perfect, but it is by a long shot better than anything else. And given that our pool in the last 2 years of volunteers who've come through our doors is about 4,000 people, I could not do a spreadsheet with that number. And I couldn't dream of what's next without having that system in place. So I'll plug that. I will say, though, agreeing with all of you, I think committee hours is the bane of my volunteer recording and reporting existence. This year we're going to trial, I think, having whatever staff member is on that board take note of who was there, say what time did the meeting start, what time did it end, and then I'll just manually add them on the back end, because then I have it, right? Because that's so much better than the nothing that we've been doing. Our board is really good about, well, medium good about reporting their own hours, and that's how I get those. But committees they're harder, right? Because there's also at home time, and that's probably gonna be my challenge for next year, is how do we account for that time? Got to start with what's my next step, right? But that's really it. And then 2 ways that we try and engage them, and agreed with Vanessa, and I think it was Manny who said, the volunteer events are a good opportunity. I always do a thank you speech, and like public speaking is not my very favorite, but what I love about it is that it's a way that I get to say thank you. And by saying thank you to those people, I'm saying thank you to everybody who's in the room, and I include all the different work. So even if that's the only thing you ever attend, hope you have a bigger picture view. And then of course, we're very reliant on our staff members to be advocates, right? Because it's true that not everybody has the time to come and volunteer in person. And so we really don't want to be in the position, and I know you guys are the same, where you have committee members who have no idea what happens, right? And that they're going off in a direction that's going to go against your mission. That's the last thing we want. And so we really do rely on our staff members to be well equipped on those committees to speak up and to say a lot about what our guest families experience and why we're doing it. Something that's been helping them in that is we added a mission moment to our monthly staff meetings. And so one of our guest families services team will do like just a 2-minute, here's something like a survey response that we received, or here's a video that we put together for this campaign, or here's something you might not know. And that helps our staff to remain connected and to have words for committee members and board members when they're wondering, like, why do we do what we do, and where's the impact? So those are a few of the ways that we try and combat that.
about having like your board members and like sharing the mission moments. This reminded me of this story back in like November, December. Right, you know, we all know holidays are crazy at RMH. We had a board member come in and drop off his pledge campaign. We are in the middle of a capital campaign to open a new program about 3 hours from where our current facility is. And so we've obviously asked, you know, for board to all give, you know, towards this campaign. And so this owner, he's a McDonald's owner operator. He's on our board. He's on our exec board. He's been around McDonald's and RMH for 50 years. And he was dropping off his pledge check, like I said, and there was a family that had just they were checking out of the house because their baby had passed away that morning. And this board member had the opportunity to sit and talk with this family, you know, and, you know, pray with them because, you know, they were all fine with that, you know, outside the doors and things like that. Anyway, he ended up calling my CEO and saying that was like the single best moment he's ever had at RMH because he's never felt so connected to the mission. And it was actually encouraged him to go back to his stores and make his store members, his crew members, plug Roundup more because he then had a story to go home and share with his crew about this is why we asked the customers to round up. And it was just a really sweet mission moment. It was one of those, if they're not in the house, if they're not feeding those families and interacting with that, how do you share the mission to get them engaged or re-engaged?
I was afraid that that story was going a different direction and that the board member did something not good in that story. So I was like I was nervous, and then it turned out well. So thank you for hearing that, but I got really really anxious about it.
He's kind of an a-hole volunteer. He's the one, Jillian, that when like all my volunteers bailed at that casino night, it was him. It was his fault. So he and I don't really jive. But it was a nice moment. So I'm glad he had it because
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Redeeming moment. Yeah, that was good. Well, and you know, we've talked a little bit about having board or committee members come like specifically to cook dinner because that's a really fun way to engage in our mission. And this is a little plug for our next meeting, which Dylan will be hosting on the topic of training paid staff in volunteer management. And I literally right before this had a conversation with some of our family service coordinators who had questions about how they should be managing when those dinner groups are volunteer or our board or committee members, or they know that they're big donors and they're not following the rules. Like, what do they do? So I literally just had that conversation because there come maybe sometimes extra challenges with inviting those folks into the house, and how our staff navigate that. And so I'm excited at our next meeting we'll be able to kind of dive into that topic, and Dylan will be hosting that. So it's all of our topics are related, it seems. We've got about 15 minutes left. So are there any final thoughts? Or again, like I said, if I didn't take you in the direction you were hoping this conversation would go, we have a little time if there's something additional you would like to discuss.
I had a question, and I apologize if you guys may have covered this earlier, but things were a little crazy, so I got in late. I know you all know how that is. But we are really hoping to expand our interpreter base here at our house. I'm in Rochester, Minnesota, and we serve families from all over the world. And we have a few Spanish interpreters right now and a few interpreters of different languages, but we're really hoping to expand that. And so potentially even having it so that volunteers who aren't housewarmers, we have like an expedited interpreting like volunteer process. Just wondering if anyone else has done that at their house and if they have thoughts on that, as well as like specific recruiting like channels for that kind of. Would love to hear your thoughts.
I don't have anything on that front, but Megan, I just attended through Volunteer Match a webinar that Jennifer Bennett was talking about kind of some of the risk management pieces of volunteerism, and they specifically covered translation and how often that's such a vital role to recruit for, but also the challenges when you need to expedite that. So I'm gonna just plug that, as I'm sure there's a recording of that if you look at the Volunteer Match Learning Center, which again, if any of you are looking for ways to learn, that's a wonderful resource. She just announced that there's going to be new learning pathways for 2024. So I will put a link in the Think Tank notebook, so that any of you who want to follow up on that can go to the website.
Megan, we use the hospital, like their interpretive services when we have a family like that. We just call them and they send somebody over. I did at one point in time pre-COVID, like this was like 17, 18 pre-COVID, had a volunteer who she actually came to me. Like this was not something I'd ever thought to specifically like solicit for. And I haven't since, but I probably should revisit this. She was Hispanic speaking, and like her parents, I can't remember really the story. Her parents were immigrants, or she was the immigrant, and remembers how wonderful it was to be able to sit at the hospital with her parents or her daughter or somebody and be able to just communicate like in her native language with somebody. And so she, for about 18 months, would come in once a week. I didn't really know when she was coming because it was kind of fluid. And she would come in, and if there was tasks we needed her to do, then she would do them. But if there was a Hispanic speaking family, she would just sit and visit with them if they wanted to visit, and they would just shoot the bull, like it was just that she was just available to just let them talk in their native language without having to worry about like, how's this translation coming across, what do they need? And it was really helpful. She unfortunately had to step away. She was in a terrible car accident and survived, but just could not volunteer after that. And it was really nice. And she was single, and she lived close to the program, to the house. And so if we had a family come in, like there was one time we had a family come in and their daughter had just had a really bad like diagnosis, and they just wanted to talk, and staff called her, and she came up at 7:30 at night and just sat for an hour with his family and just let him talk. And it was wonderful while we had her. But like I said, I didn't specifically solicit. She came to me with this idea, which was wonderful. I mean, I never would have thought about it had she had not had it first.
We use a paid service when we need that. But we do, I mentioned this earlier, but I don't think you had joined yet, Megan. We do use volunteers to translate like written materials or things that it's not like a last minute, like we need you to come right now, so that we can plan ahead. But we pay for the translation services. And I'll be honest, our chapter doesn't need them very often. We don't have a lot of international folks or folks who have a different native language. It's pretty rare for us, so it hasn't been a huge need. Our hospital is sometimes helpful with sending a translator, but not always. So we have found another service on our own.
I just also put a link to what we use, because we have a little rolling cart that has we can dial up a translator, and we mostly have Spanish speaking families, and we have a couple of Spanish speaking staff members, but we actually had a family here from the Marshall Islands who only speaks Marshallese, which how many people even know that's a language? And you definitely don't expect that in little Boise, Idaho. So that has been a game changer for us, because we can call them up and we can roll the cart with us. So when we take a family on the tour, they can ask questions and the translator can speak with a staff member and bridge that gap. So it is a paid service, but we're really thankful for it.
We also, in our family room, will frequently use Google Translate to help, because it's often a really quick interaction, and it's just, is the coffee free kind of questions. And so we will frequently use that for just those really quick conversations if someone is having a language barrier. We also used our iPads heavily. We recently had a deaf family staying with us, and most of our staff, one of our staff knew some sign language, but most of our staff did not. So we were able to use that also as a tool to communicate, which was really helpful. Okay, awesome. Vanessa's asking if the volunteer match learning opportunities are free, and they are. And so you can access those without a paid membership.
Yes, I think.
And they're
the
usually
only
really
thing-
well done.
Yeah, they're so amazing. I think the only thing that some members pay for is like if you have a lot of postings, and it's another great way to get volunteers, because you can post about opportunities and people from around the country look for things online. So I even have remote projects that people participate from across the country in. So it is a really great tool. And yeah, and the learning opportunities, I've taken every class. I think I have taken every class. They're amazing.
I do post opportunities on there, and I do get a lot of responses actually through Volunteer Match. And I only recently saw some of their topics, but I didn't go so far to see like, are these just available all the time? But that's on my list. It's been on my list this year to really dig through and review that. So thanks for answering that for me.
This has been a really great conversation today. I appreciate you all always sharing your ideas and your thoughts. And it always, I think, sparks creative ideas in my head of things I could be doing differently or better. So thank you all for helping with that. Dylan, do you have any questions or things that you want feedback on as you prepare for the next session, which let me pull up what that date is. That would be March 21st. So that's a Thursday. So we are switching between Wednesdays and Thursdays because we know one day doesn't work for everybody. So we're switching. Hopefully you can catch most of them. But that topic will be training paid staff in volunteer management. Oh, we can't hear you for some reason, although it says you're unmuted. Nope. There you go. Yep.
Okay, there we go. Thank you for asking, Jillian. At least for our houses, I always tell volunteers during the onboarding process, which is done by one of our volunteer services team staff, that even though we're the ones kind of teaching them all the basics of volunteering, that at the end of the day, once they actually get started, their supervisor, so to say, is going to be whoever is sitting at the manager's desk, which, especially for us, looks a little bit different every day, and depending on what time the volunteer is coming in. So just kind of want to do a temperature check. Is that pretty similar to how your guys' programs run, where once volunteers are actually on site, all of their questions or comments go to the house manager, or are you guys more active in that? Okay, awesome.
We're personally very similar to you, unless it's like I mean, I still take their questions and comments, but not necessarily about how to like use the mop sync.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we're similar to you, Dylan. You all, those who've been around before, Jillian especially, Stephanie's probably heard me say this before. I, at one point in time, relied heavily on my staff training my volunteers. And then COVID hit, we paused the program, the volunteers all quit, and they all told me that they quit because they were in a miserable experience because they weren't trained.
Right.
So well, I relied on the staff to do it. Clearly the staff wasn't doing it. Nobody told me till it was too late. So I'm super interested to sit through March because we still haven't figured out the right way to do it. So yeah, so I depend on staff, but I probably should have done it more myself.
Awesome. I guess the last thing I'll ask too, as we prep for that March meeting, is if you guys have any like actual written documents for the rest of your staff based on volunteer management. It's something that me and my coworker worked on over the last couple of weeks, is kind of reviving this document that existed beforehand that we found. Kind of just walking staff through different like potential situations that could happen with volunteers, how to speak to them, and kind of, especially right now, our chapter is focused on trauma-informed care, which, funny enough, Jillian, we watched the one video from, I forget her name now, but I remember seeing you in that call that was recorded. But that's something we're focusing on among staff and kind of trying to trickle down to our volunteers as well. So just wondering if that's kind of any formal document you guys have to train new and old staff on volunteer interactions. So would it be helpful if we kind of went through our document that we have and shared a little bit of that?
Yes, I don't have one, but I would love one.
Okay, I can share that.
Awesome. Thank you.
I will just
Alright.
note, I know we're almost out of time, that I've been taking notes. Thank you, Jillian, for letting me swap roles with you this time. And so those are all in that Think Tank notebook, other than what Erica's gonna do after her gala is over. But you all are
I
welcome
set a
to.
reminder.
Yes, I will set a reminder. And I would love if you all go and flesh out if I took improper notes or something that's incomplete and you want to add something, or if you're like, I thought of this after the meeting, always a resource. I've been inviting more people. I hope you all have, I know I got lots of referrals for this year, and so I think we'll see some folks on our Thursday session who we haven't gotten to see before, and that'll be really exciting. But I really want that to be a resource for those of you who aren't here, as a, you know, if you miss a session, that you can still contribute, you can still see what was contributed. And then I'm going to be really working hard to record so that that is accessible for those who need to miss. But I don't know of a good video hosting service, at least for free. Maybe I need to look into YouTube. I'm just like against it somehow. I don't know why. I'm old enough probably to be against it. That's probably the real answer. So maybe I need to look into that so that we have a repository for videos, because I just see that it's going to be a huge help. But yeah, that's just two resources. Spread the word.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Again, a great conversation today, and look forward to the next one. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, or if it's 5 o'clock for you like it is for me, have a good night. See y'all in March.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Donna, oh.